So UFC Jacksonville, Emmett vs Topuria just wrapped up, and I'm going to be going over the whole card, giving my reaction and breakdown of every single fight on the card, starting with the opening prelim, ending with the main event, giving my reaction to every card, and maybe giving some next fight to makes for all the fights on the card, the key fights on the card. Starting with the prelim opener, Cody Brundage versus Sedriques Dumas. Um, Sedriques Dumas won a decision. It was not the most entertaining fight. Cody Brundage did not look good at all. He came into this fight with a really weird game plan of pulling guillotines and not having any ability to get up from bottom. So it's a bit weird to see from him. I did pick him to win. I thought he would have a substantial grappling advantage, and I thought he would run through Dumas, who didn't look good in his UFC debut with the grappling. But Dumas proved me wrong. Came in with much improved grappling. He said he was working his wrestling and his cardio and stuff, and he looked a lot better in those areas. But Brundage just looked terrible. He should be cut from the UFC for this. He pulled guillotines multiple times. Just got held. He got reversed and held down by Sedriques Dumas, who is not a wrestler or a grappler by any means. And then he just got outstruck on the feet. So a good win for Dumas. Rebounded from a tough debut. And he can now move forward in the middleweight division. But Cody Brundage, it's tough for him. I think you've got to cut him. He's coming off two losses, and going into this fight, I was like, oh, you look at his losses, it's not that bad. Like none of the losses too bad. Like Rodolfo Vieira, Mikel Jacek, like those aren't bad losses to have. But you're getting held down and controlled and just beaten everywhere by Sedriques Dumas. I can't really support you for forward in your career. So I think he's going to probably get cut from this. That's three losses in a row. But good win for Dumas. Moving on, Jamall Emmers versus Jack Jenkins. Jack Jenkins won a split decision, which I thought he lost. It was a very entertaining fight for the most part. The third round, a bit slower. Jamall Emmers got a takedown and just held control time. But for the first two rounds, it was a really exciting scrap on the feet. The decision did go to Jenkins. Two judges gave it 29-28. One judge gave it 30-27 for Emmers. I personally think it was Emmers 2 rounds to one, the second and third going to Emmers, and I even think there was a solid argument for the first going to Emmers as well. So I don't even think it would be a ridiculous scorecard to give a 3-0 scorecard for Emmers, but 3-0 wouldn't have been like a domination. It was a close fight. Would I say robbery? I would say it's a bad decision. Robbery, I think, is reserved for only a few fights where the winner was just so clear. So I don't think this is one of those, but I do personally think Jamal Emmers did win the second round. I think he landed better shots on the feet. Jenkins had the leg kicks, which were good. Like he was doing well with those in the fight. That was seemed to be his game plan, which was working effectively in the first round. And he landed some good leg kicks at the start of the second. But apart from that, in the round, Emmers was just pressuring him back, landing some really good punches, clean, um, dodging a lot of Jenkins shots, checking a lot of the leg kicks, getting out of the way of a lot of the kicks as well. So I personally think he won that round. Even the first round was pretty back and forth. It kind of goes off like, do you value leg kicks? Which, like, we all know leg kicks hurt. Like, if you train kickboxing or MMA or Muay Thai, you know that getting kicked in the legs hurt. But the scoring criteria is meant to be written on like immediate damage and fight-ending potential, which I don't think those leg kicks did have. I think the pressure and the good shots that Emmers landed, I think those were more contributing towards a potential end to the fight. But I did pick Emmers going into it, so maybe I've got a bit of bias there. But I'm Australian. Like I commented on Jack Jenkins' post on Instagram saying that Emmers won. This is my opinion. I wasn't really trying to start anything. And then there's like 40 replies on that post. Like everyone was just coming at me saying, "Oh, cry, you're salty, coping." Like I'm Australian. I literally couldn't care less. I'm happy that Jenkins won. Like I I picked Emmers going into the fight because I thought he was a better fighter. And as far as I'm concerned, my prediction was fucking correct because he won the fight in my opinion, and he did better overall, and he won that fight as a whole as well. And everyone's like, "Oh, you're so salty. Get deal with it. Jenkins won. He's better." And it's like I, it's just odd to be honest. People just like saying all this weird shit. Like everyone's saying that it was a clear Jenkins won, but then even some people are like, "Oh yeah, he like Australian fans." I'm seeing people saying, "I'm Australian, but you lost that fight." It's like, yes, thank you. Like there's some non-biased people that aren't just so delusional that they can't tell the result of a fight. Like, I like Jenkins, and I think he's got a good future in the featherweight division, but I looked at him in this fight and I was like, I think Emma's going to win. And that if you're going to pick every fight based off who you prefer, then that's a terrible way to pick fights or who's like your home guy. But never mind, he got a good win. It did look impressive regardless of if he won or not. Like, they both looked really good. It was one of the best fights on the card that didn't get finished. Like, there were two absolute bangers, which we'll talk about in a bit. But this was probably one of the best, most technical fights as well on the card. But Jenkins said he wants to fight in Sydney. I'm all down for it. He called out Nate Landwehr. I don't mind that. Coming off a loss to Dan Ige. I don't mind a Charles Jourdain matchup either. I think that could be something. Either of those two, I think, will be really good competitive fights. You're not rushing him into the top 15 right now. There's no way he's ready for that caliber. I think if you give him a top 15 opponent, he'll lose. So I think a few more unranked guys. Emmers is actually a very high level opponent, so he did do well. You've got to look at this and say, Emmers went to a split decision with Giga Chikadze. Um, and Jenkins went to a split decision with him. So Jenkins is a very good fighter. Emmers is a very good fighter. Tough for Emmers. Could have won. He'll rebounds. He's a good fighter. I think they can both. I think these two will both be in the top 15 sometime in the next 2 years. I think you'll see their names both in the top 15. But anyway, moving on. Trevor Peek versus Chepe Mariscal. In my video on Tuesday, I picked Chepe Mariscal, but then I submitted my final predictions on Saturday before the card, and I did pick Phillip to Trevor Peek, which was a dumb decision. I got kind of baited by everyone. I got like swayed by everyone. I heard everyone saying Peek's gonna knock him out. He's too big for him. He's too wild for him. He's too unpredictable. Um, but I should have just stuck with my gut, which was that Mariscal's a far technically better fighter. And in the UFC at the highest level, it's not a street fight, and you can get takedowns and you can actually be better than a fighter and not just get knocked out because they throw standing hammer fists. So I should have stuck with my pick. It is what it is. I got it wrong. Mariscal won a decision. It was I think it was the best fight on the card. Emmett versus Topuria won fight of the night, but I personally think this was fight of the night. I have no idea how this didn't get finished. I said in this fight, that it didn't go the distance was the lock. My mate was asking me for like a parlay, and I said, one of my first like most confident leg was like fight does not go the distance. It was like sitting at like $1.22. It was paying like nothing. Everyone was like, this is getting finished in the first round, and it somehow went distance. Absolute barn burner of a fight. Trevor Peek has got a fucking granite chin. He's got that weird. He's got like the sort of not quite as good as Vittoric chin. He did get rocked and stuff, but like he just takes shots. It's like he's too dumb. His fight IQ, he's too fucking stupid to get rocked or to take damage. So it was really weird, funny to see. Starting standing hammer fists, rocked Mariscal at moments in the fight. Mariscal rocked him at many times, landed some teeps to the face. It was absolutely crazy. If you didn't see the fight, most of the people watching this, you're probably all from Australia, so it was early. I do acknowledge that. But so if you didn't get to watch this fight, definitely go back and rewatch it. This was one of the best ones on the card. So go give it a watch. But Mariscal did look good making his UFC debut. Again, should have just trusted my instinct and stuck with him. Don't know why I picked flipped. Would have gone even on picks on this card if I hadn't. But it is what it is. Good win from Mariscal. He should probably just be looking at kind of anyone, like any sort of fighter. Um, uh, First fight in his career, and we now kind of know, or first fight in his UFC career, and we now know that Trevor Peek isn't that good, so it's not like that's a really high level win. But he did look good in the fight. Got the takedowns, got landed well on the feet. Got baited into a brawl a bit, but not too much. So it was good to see from him. And then Peek, he'll be around for a while. He'll just have fun fights, and he'll always produce fight of the nights. But did lose this fight and didn't look too good. But moving on, Giagas Zhumagulov versus Joshua Van. I picked Giagas Zhumagulov to win a decision, and he did not. Joshua Van won a split decision. Probably shouldn't have been a split. I think Joshua Van won pretty clearly 2 rounds to 1. He looked really good in this fight as a 21-year-old in the flyweight division. Looked very impressive. First round, very close. Could have gone either way. I think more people probably leaned Giagas. Second round, Joshua Van had landed some big shots, had a big flurry, almost got Jalgas out of there. Third round, another close one. But Joshua Van did look very good in the fight. Jargas, it's unfortunate for him. This was kind of his last chance. He's now 1-6 in the UFC, so I wouldn't be surprised if he was cut from this. I think they kind of had to give him an opportunity because they were acknowledging they're like, oh, you had some split losses that should have gone your way, but this was a split loss that didn't go his way, and I do agree with the decision. But Joshua Van is a 21-year-old. He can take his time. He looked really good in the fight. Definitely could be a prospect to watch. Build him up slowly. Doesn't have to be crazy. He can fight some lower level names. And see where he goes. Jargas probably going to be it for him in the UFC, but it was a good one. He was a funny guy. Got the haircut and everything. Unfortunately, didn't get the robbery decision with the Paddy haircut. Didn't work. But moving on, Tabatha Ricci versus Gillian Robertson. Not a great fight to watch. I kind of zoned out a little bit during the fight. I'll be honest. I was just messaging my mates on Instagram, but like first round was pretty terrible. Like they really weren't doing anything. They were just kind of. I was like, maybe they're just sizing each other up. Maybe they're just making reads and stuff, expecting them to go a bit harder in the second. Didn't. A few takedowns for both of them, but the other got right back up when they did. There were no real significant moments, no big shots landed on the feet. Tabatha Ricci just won a decision via doing a bit more and just throwing a bit more. Probably not even landing more, but just had more output, and that looks better as a judge, I guess, when no one gets rocked or taken down or in a submission attempt. So Tabatha Ricci won. I picked Gillian Robertson. Dumb call for me. I got a bit too kind of baited into the fact that she subbed Rose Namajunas and subbed her last opponent. You got to really look in the levels of the division and kind of see that she's a good fighter, but not just really didn't do enough or didn't do anything to win. So moving on, I don't really care what's next for either of them. Ricci's in the rankings. She'll probably fight maybe an unranked girl or maybe someone else in the top 10. Robertson probably just fight someone else randomly. Doesn't really matter. Um, Moving on though, Mateusz Rabecki versus Loik Radhzabov. I picked Mateusz Rabecki in this fight, and he won by a knockout. It was very impressive to see. One of the only finish on the prelims. Actually, it was. I woke up at 1:30 a.m. Australia time for these prelims, and I'll be honest, not a heap of them did deliver. Obviously, the Emmers Jenkins fight was very good. The Peak fight was good, and then this was a really sick finish. But apart from that, nothing else too crazy on the prelims. But Mateusz Rabecki looked really good in this fight. I picked him to win, but I was very on the fence with this, but he made it look easy. That's 15 wins in a row for him. In this fight, landed the leg kicks really well. He was fucking up Loik Radhzabov's legs, dropped him with leg kicks, dropped him with a big punch, had him rocked, had him hurt. The referee kind of let it go for a little bit, chopped his leg again. He was pretty much on one leg just against the cage, shelling up. Rabecki was landing big shots, and then he eventually landed another knockdown, and the ref kind of just stepped in straight away. So it was a little bit early stoppage maybe, but I think the fact that he knew how cooked Radhzabov's leg was, I think he just was like, fuck it, I'll just stop the fight. But a really good win for Rabecki. I think probably not a ranked opponent. You maybe could do a Grant Dawson if he loses to Damir Ismagulov next weekend. You could do a Grant Dawson fight. Could do maybe a Jim Miller. Maybe just one of those guys. Rafa Garcia, maybe just one of those guys. Really close. 15 to 22 ranked. No further than that. He really showed to be really good in this fight. Looked very impressive, crisp on the feet. Had a big size disadvantage as well, but it really didn't matter for him. And he looked good and finished Loik Radhzabov in the second round and looked really good doing so. Um, but moving on, Randy Brown versus Wellington Turman. Randy Brown won a unanimous decision. It was a very close fight though. Many people kind of thought Turman won, but no one really took an issue with the decision. It's kind of weird, when people pick the guy to win and then he wins a really close fight. There's zero talk about close. Maybe that could have gone the other way. I personally do think Brown won, but I was surprised there wasn't at least one scorecard for Turman. He landed some really good leg kicks in the fight, Wellington Turman did. Moving down from the middleweight division to welterweight, there was a bit of questions surrounding how he kind of looked. Looked like big, not as tall as Randy Brown, obviously, but very filled out and big. This kind of looked like a budget version of Adesanya versus Pereira, if we're being honest. same color trunks for each guy. Randy Brown with the green, Pereira with the yellow. Or sorry, Turman with the yellow, looking like Pereira came out with that very front on, like upright stance, landing the leg kicks really well, like Pereira does, hiding those kind of leg kicks behind the stance. Maybe it's something with that stance. I'm not sure what it is, but seems like that stance really allows fighters to land those low kicks really well. So it was good. He was doing some good work here. I think a lot of people expected Randy Brown to just school him and KO him in the second or third. I think I did pick Randy Brown to get a finish. He ended up getting the decision. Um, but still, decent performance from Randy Brown. He landed most of his work. Landed some clinch. He got the back at a moment. He like kind of jumped up, spun around and got the hooks in on the back while standing. So that was pretty cool to see. Um, but Turman, even in the third round, busting out with some elbows in the clinch, it was kind of harder to see the visible damage. Um, Randy Brown's like having like darker skin and stuff. It sounds kind of weird to say, but he had darker skin, so it's like you can't really see the blood as much. And he had like big, like his lips were kind of swollen up. He had a big hematoma on his forehead. So like I think maybe if he, it sounds really weird to say, but if he was white and they saw how much damage that was on his face, I actually think he could have lost that fight. I just think the damage was not as visible. But Turman landed some really good elbows in the clinch. First round, Randy Brown landed a really good, really nice really nice flying knee to the body, and then got a takedown right at the end of the round. Which I haven't seen the scorecards, but they were all 29-28. So I imagine that did win him the first round, which is kind of weird. Like it shows how impressionable judges can be if a fighter just has one big moment, which he did. But apart from that, like it was pretty much like a clinch fight. Range Randy Brown. I think it's just the visual of a guy out range, just popping and moving and stuff. Just looks like they're making it look easy, even though Turman was landing some really good shots and some good leg kicks. Um, I know I'm kind of contradicting myself though, because obviously in the Jenkins fight he was landing the leg kicks, but I just think overall Emmers in that fight was landing more than Turman was in this fight, if that makes sense. Like there was more other shots. Like Randy Brown in this fight didn't land much on the feet compared to Emmers, who landed a lot on the feet to kind of even out the leg kicks. But in this fight, Randy Brown didn't actually land a whole lot of on the feet. I think a lot of the most significant strikes were probably the leg kicks of Wellington Turman, but he did lose the decision. But definitely looked better than expected. Randy Brown before the Jack Della Maddalena fight was like one of those kind of promising guys, 15 to kind of 25 ranked guys, maybe could crack the rankings at a point. Was looking really good in his last two fights. Got KO'd by Della Maddalena, and we're like, oh, whatever. Everyone expected him to lose anyway, so everyone's like, Jack Della Maddalena is just that good, which he is. But then against Turman coming down, I picked him to not really have much of a chance. I said he got smoked by Andre Prochowski in the grappling. He won't out grapple Randy Brown, which he didn't. He didn't really get. He got one takedown, I think. And then I didn't think he would outstrike him based off his last fights, but he did very well. Didn't get the win. I'd say maybe you could do a Randy Brown versus maybe a Nicholas Dalby, perhaps. You could do that kind of fight. For Wellington Turman now in the welterweight division, could be doing maybe like a Muslim Salikov fight coming off a loss. Something along those lines. But regardless, good, solid fight, nothing crazy. Close decision went to Randy Brown, and he got his hand raised. Moving on though, Neil Magny versus Phillip Rowe. This was the headliner of the prelims, and it kind of lowered the note, kind of soured the note of the prelims, which were solid for the most part. But this and the Robertson Ricci fight were the two worst fights on the card. Um, just a Magny clinch fest. A Magny clinch fest is what happened. It ended up being a split for Magny. I could kind of see it. Like Rowe landed a bit more on the feet. Magny kind of had some blitzes that maybe appeared to be more effective than they were. But apart from that, Magny did what Magny does. He fought an unranked guy who was trying to take his spot in the rankings, and he said, "Nah," and I'll just out clinch you. That's what he did. He out clinched him, got cage control. Very dead fight. Let me check the numbers. Um, 29 significant strikes for Neil Magny, 34 for Phillip Rowe, but 109 total strikes for Magny. So that pretty much all of that was clinch. And a 68% accuracy in strike, 68% strike accuracy for Magny, but pretty much all of those were in the clinch. So it was a pretty boring fight though. Magny will probably have to fight another unranked guy, to be honest, because it wasn't the most impressive performance. Phil Rowe showed a pretty bad lack of fight IQ in this fight. He said he was watching a bunch of tape on Neil Magny. Didn't really show, because if you watch tape on Neil Magny, he would know that Neil Magny beats most of his opponents through clinching. And he went straight into the clinch with Neil Magny. Didn't have enough time on the feet to really do anything. He got a takedown in the fight. Didn't do much with it. But Magny won, boring split decision. Like, Rowe will probably fight back in the rankings. He got a jump up, didn't make the most of it. And then Neil Magny will probably fight a guy coming off a win in that 15 to 20 stage, or maybe he'll fight a ranked guy, but probably not. But moving on to the main card opener, Brendan Allen versus Bruno Silva. Brendan Allen looked very impressive. He showed out in this fight and got a round 1 submission. He looked really good on the feet as well, dropping Bruno Silva in this fight before getting the sub. A really exciting first round to watch. It was kind of nerve-wracking. Allen has never been known to have the best chin. Did get cracked at moments in this fight. Obviously, we know Silva hits really, really hard. But Silva was getting dropped and wobbled by Brendan Allen, who's never known to be this massive power puncher in the middleweight division. Obviously went to a decision with Alex Pereira, and Silvan's like, oh, he's actually good. But then after that fight, he kind of went on a bit of a downhill spiral. Lost to GM3, the GOAT. Got like dropped. It's really weird. He's getting dropped by like these submission artists and stuff. But yeah. So yeah, it's kind of weird getting dropped by these submission artists. Like same with Allen. Allen's this weird fucking guy though. Like in his last fight before this, was losing to Muniz on the feet and then subbed Muniz, who's meant to be one of the best jiu-jitsu guys in the middleweight division. And in this fight, drops and hurts and like you call it it's a submission, but like it's half a TKO as well. Like when the guy's rocked and stuff, the submission comes so much easier. He got a rear naked choke with no hooks in. That kind of shows you like Silva just wasn't with it. But it's so weird, like how he's getting outstruck by Andre Muniz, but then he outstrikes and drops and hurts Bruno Silva. So weird kind of fight. He called out Jared Cannonier, pumped the brakes. You're not getting that fight. He'd get smoked by Jared Cannonier. I'm thinking like if he's fighting up in the rankings, which I think he deserves because he fought an unranked guy here, defended his spot. Maybe you do like a Nasruddin Mavov, maybe a Roman Dolidze. Maybe you could rebook the Jack Hermansson fight, which was booked for the main event of June 2nd. But I don't really know. I think with that middleweight division right now, lots of fights booked that'll really make the contender pool a lot clearer. There's like obviously Whitaker versus DDP, Costa versus Aliskerov, Strickland versus Magomedov coming up. So like I'd say really try and get out of those three, out of Imavov, Hermansson, and Dolidze, pick the one that you think is gonna get you the most chance. Obviously, as Charles Sonnen said, pick the easiest fight for the most money. Just fight whichever one of those is probably going to take you to whoever's the highest ranked there. I believe it's Imavov, could be Dolidze though. I'm not sure. It's one of those two. So pick the highest ranked one. Who do you think's easier, and just get a fight with them. Didn't take a heap of damage. He did get caught on the feet a little bit by Bruno Silva, but not a ridiculous amount of damage. So he should be able to turn around relatively quickly. Maybe you could do a Nasruddin Imavov on the Paris card. That could be a thing. I was calling for Imavov versus Dolidze on the Paris card. I thought that was a perfect fight to make. But if you want to do a Imavov fight that's like a feature fight on that Paris card, then I think that could be cool. You could do just a Hermansson. I could see them main eventing an Apex card with that. But if I'm correct, the schedule right now, I don't think there's any Apex cards for quite a while. There's an Apex card, Strickland Magomedov. Holm vs Bruno Silva is an Apex card. RDA vs Luque August 12th is an Apex card. And then there's the Paris card, there's UFC 293, there's the T-Mobile card, and there's a September 23rd fight night. So maybe do it there. I think that's an Apex card. So maybe Hermansson vs Allen, September 23rd fight night main event could happen. But a really good performance from Brendan Allen. Give him his purple shorts. That's apparently what he wants more than a fight in the top 10. Anyway, moving on. David Onama versus Gabriel Santos. David Onama looked very good in this fight. Got a second round knockout, a vicious knockout over Gabriel Santos. Got him with an uppercut and flatlined him. He landed some good shots. Caught him with an uppercut, landed a left hook as Santos was on his way down and put him out. In my opinion, kind of ruined it with the Adesanya celebration with the bow and arrows. It's just kind of cringe. It doesn't like it only really had that effect for Adesanya. When Adesanya did it, it was cool because of the whole Pereira storyline, but with this here, I just think it was kind of odd. But if you're looking at the fight, though, Gabriel Santos was doing really well. Won the first round really clearly, was winning on the feet quite comfortably. Had a really good armbar attempt as well in the first round. Had a nice scramble, almost got a standing armbar. But Onama got out of it, and he showed much improved cardio in this fight than in his previous fights against like Nate Landwehr, where he really gassed out after the first round. But Santos looks like he's a really. It's sad for him. I was a Santos fan. I was picking him to win this fight. I got this one wrong. Um, but he looks like a really good fighter. Like he looked really good against Laverne Murphy. Had a really technical scrap. I thought he won that fight. And then in this fight, winning pretty clearly in the first, winning the second, and then just gets caught. So maybe he's very young. Maybe he's got a bit of a chin issue. Like doesn't have that grit maybe. But I think it's kind of sad to see. I think Onama you could be looking at a maybe you could do an Onama versus Jenkins. You could do that. Onama versus maybe a Charles Jourdain, one of those kind of guys. I'd love a rematch with Nate Landwehr. Probably wouldn't. They don't really do rematches, but I'd love that. But looked good in this fight. Gabriel Santos takes some time off, got a bad KO loss, and then just rebounds. I think he's both of these guys. More so, I actually think Santos, given his younger age, I think has a really good, promising future in this division. But I think he's got to just really kind of get his strength about him and stuff. He looks like a really technical fighter, but just doesn't quite have that like man strength and that power and that chin as well. Which obviously you can't really get a better chin, but yeah, so I think both of these guys, you could see them maybe in the rankings just outside next few years. Onama didn't take a hell of a lot of damage. Might have took a bit of damage to that arm in that armbar attempt maybe. Had some good shots landed on him. Turnaround, I'd say September, October. Maybe if you want to take a bit more time off, go November. Gabriel Santos, come back for the Brazil card. I just remember that there's that Brazil card, Sao Paulo in November. Um, get him on there. That's a perfect amount of time off for him. I think, like July, August, September, October, November, 5 months. Like got not quite flatlined, but pretty badly KO'd. So I think 5 months is a perfect amount of time, and give him a relatively easy fight in front of Brazil to get his confidence back. But moving on, Austin Lane versus Justin Tafa. Not much to talk about here. 29 seconds in, there was an eye poke from Austin Lane to Justin Tafa, caused the end of the fight. Swelled up Tafa's eye bad. It was one of the worst eye pokes I've seen. Austin Lane's finger was like knuckle deep in Tafa's eye. It was really horrible to see. Really not much to go off in the fight. Lane landed two good body kicks. Apart from that, just circling, and then came in for an exchange on the way out. Lane like kind of pushed his hand forward, got him in the eye, and fight's done. Nothing to talk about really. Tough will need some time off. Bad eye poke. Lane should. It's unfortunate because it would have been if it was like a groin shot that couldn't continue, or like a back of the head shot or something. Or a illegal knee or something like that. He probably could have turned around for the Australia card. But how badly his eye swelled up and how much damage he took just from that eye poke, um, won't be seeing him in Australia. I don't think, which is unfortunate. But moving on to the co-main event, Amanda Ribas versus Macy Barber. I did pick Amanda Ribas to win this fight, and I was wrong. I didn't think Macy Barber was that good. I said she was the queen of split decisions, and she wasn't going to get a split decision against Amanda Ribas. I thought Ribas was much better in the grappling, better in the striking, but Barber proved me wrong. Landed some really good shots. First round, clearly won. Landed some good ground and pound. Bloodied up the nose of Amanda Ribas. And in the second round, came out guns blazing. Landed some big head kicks, big shots. Rocked Amanda Ribas. Took her down. and just landed some ground and pound shots and got her out of there. It was a really impressive win to see. Um, Off her last fight, though, like I just really didn't expect her to look this good. She came out much better than expected. I think a lot of people were picking against her in this fight, and maybe that motivated her to come out with an impressive performance and get a finish. She got a performance bonus, well deserved. The performance bonuses on this card went to Amanda Ribas and David Onama. I personally think Brendan Allen should have gotten one, and I think it wouldn't be far-fetched to give Rabecki one as well. There were only 4 finishes on this card, so I think in an arena fight, not on ABC, I think you just give all the finishes or give all the finishes bonuses. And then Emmett versus Topuria got fight of the night as well, which I thought was weird. I thought Peak versus Mariscal was fight of the night personally, but it is what it is. But good performance from Macy Barber. She'll be fighting up in the division now. I'd say that Jennifer Meyer is probably the fight to make there. And Amanda Ribas takes some time off, got badly damaged in that fight, and probably gonna have to fight outside the rankings. She's got rankings at strawweight and flyweight, so she can pick which one she wants to go back to. Maybe go flyweight. That this fight was at flyweight, so maybe stay at flyweight. Don't cut yourself down too much. And just take some time off. Maybe Brazil card for her as well. Um, but moving on to the main event, Josh Emmett versus Ilia Topuria. Where do I start? Ilia Topuria schools Josh Emmett and pieced him up and damaged him badly and whooped his ass for 5 straight rounds. Not a moment of this fight really had success for Josh Emmett. The first round was like not a complete blowout, but after that, and he had some moments at the start of the 5th round, but apart from that, it was all Topuria. Rocked him badly all the multiple moments in this fight. Pressured him effectively. Didn't get overconfident. Didn't rush in and leave himself open. He fought defensively very well in this fight, and I did pick him to win. Obviously, I picked him by a knockout, but he got a decision. He got a decision win in this fight. Which is almost better in my opinion. I think how impressive he looked over the 5 rounds and how he showed really good cardio. Did not tire out. Held a pace the whole time at a good pace as well at a high intensity fight. Had some good shots landed on him as well. Josh Emmett, obviously, he pretty much lands on everyone. Hard to avoid the power punches of Josh Emmett. But in this fight, it was just really the story of the fight was really who had the more weapons. Josh Emmett had a left hook, a lunging, jumping left hook, and then a swinging right overhand, and then a left overhand as well. Josh Emmett was just swinging. He didn't set much. He didn't land like any leg kicks. Didn't land many body shots. Didn't pop the jab out there, which is something Topuria did very well. Topuria's jab was probably the most impressive thing I saw in this fight from him. Obviously the power was good. He dropped Josh Emmett and hurt him badly, but I think the real thing that won him this fight actually was just his jab. I think he was busting up Josh Emmett's face with the jab, swelling up his eyes, blooding up his face, blooding up his nose, causing some real damage, swelling up his eyes. Fight could have probably been stopped at the end of the 4th. It was definitely a 10-8 round. Got dropped twice, ground and pounded. Almost got a finish at the end. Topuria did. He was definitely looking for a finish. He said that. He said he wanted a finish to make a statement to secure a title shot, but he didn't get a finish. But I do think he's secured a title shot regardless. I think Volkanovski, if he does beat Yair Rodriguez in 2 weeks' time, which I will be picking him to do, I think he'll win a decision or maybe a late TKO. I think you could turn that around in September. If Volk doesn't take a hell of a lot of damage, he can turn around. It's only 2 months, so it's a quick turnaround. 3 months for Topuria. But I do think Volk is that guy. Out of all the champions, Volk's the guy that could fight Yair fucking Rodriguez and then turn around in 2 months to fight Ilia Topuria. And I think he's best. I think Volk's more than. I think like that's smart for him. Take Topuria now. Like Topuria looks really good now at 26 years of age. Imagine what he's going to look like next year. And then also remains to be seen when is Volk going to slow down. Volk's 34 years of age, turns 35 in September, the week after the Australia card. When's he going to start to regress? Like we don't know. He could get KO'd in this Zaire fight, or he could take a lot of damage, can't turn around, and then comes back too soon or something like that, and then gets knocked out. You never know. Like Volk, I don't think Volk's that guy for that to happen, and I think Volk's going to be one of those anomalies that just fights way past where you'd think their prime would be, because I think he's just that good. But I think his best bet's just take Topuria now. Both of them, if Volk wins, both like it's not like he's giving Topuria a massive advantage in the fight camp or anything like that. Like it'd be it's 2 weeks longer. These fights are 2 weeks apart. I think they did that deliberately. I think the UFC had confidence that Topuria would beat Josh Emmett, and so I think they deliberately booked it a few weeks before the Volkanovski fight to give a clear next fight if Volk wins. Obviously, if Yair wins, you do a rematch. Volk's a long reigning champion. He deserves a rematch if he loses. But they've given a clear next contender here. And I'm not a fan of a Holloway fight here. I don't think it's necessary. Holloway's booked the fight in late August anyway, so I think it's kind of stupid. Um, like you might as well just get a. I talked about this a bit already, but you might as well just get a new contender. Like it's stupid for Holloway to keep killing all these prospects. Like, imagine they Volk doesn't fight on the Sydney card. Imagine Volk beats Yair, doesn't fight on the Sydney card, doesn't fight in October in Abu Dhabi because it's going to be Islam versus Oliveira probably. Sterling's going to want some time off after he probably beats O'Malley, and then he wants to move up. So that's a fight there already. And then you've got a kind of log jam of if you then want to give Topuria a title shot and you don't do it in September, you have to give Sterling a fight as a champion moving up. Um, so you have to give Sterling a fight whenever he wants it. So that might happen in February. So if Volk doesn't fight in September, he's not fighting from July till August, September, October, November, December, January, February. Like that's 7 months for Volk. Volk doesn't want to wait 7 months. Volk would rather turn around quick in September, get 3 fights in 2023, and then fight Sterling in 2024 in February or something like that. I think that's what they should do. So I think as long as Volk doesn't get battered or take a lot of damage against Yair, which I have faith that he can get through that fight relatively, I won't say unscathed, but without taking huge punishment. Obviously, Topuria took a bit of punishment too, so it's not like Topuria is coming off a round one KO with no damage and Volk's gonna about to go through a war. Like if Volk goes through a war, um, then it's not like it's a complete disadvantage for him. Like he'll still have this time, he'll recover a little bit. Volk's like 2 months. That's 8 weeks. That's a training camp. Like that's fine. Um, so I just think stop giving prospects to Holloway. I think this win, dominant win, showing good cardio, good power, good speed, a really good jab, good technique, just really good all-round skills from Ilia Topuria. I think he's shown enough to secure a title shot. I just don't think they really benefit from doing a Holloway fight because Holloway will probably Holloway takes damage in all his fights. It's just the way that he fights. So if Holloway schools Zombie, which I think he will, that's August. Like when will he fight Topuria if they want to make that fight happen? Like December or something like that. Like who cares? That's just too long to wait. That's stupid. So give it to Topuria. Looked really good in the fight. Pretty much went over it already. Like round one, close. Round two, I think he dropped Emmett off balance once, but landed some really good shots. His pullback counters in this fight as well. His lean back counters were really slick. Distance management was elite. In this fight, he showed really good ability of knowing how far away Emmett was from him and sliding out of the way of a lot of Josh Emmett's shots. Let me check the stats. Emmett landed 87 of 305 strikes. Josh Emmett was swinging like a wild man, landed 28.5% of his strikes thrown. And that's really a credit to the defensive mind of Ilia Topuria. Blocked a lot of the shots on the guard, leaned away from a lot of them, dodged them, slipped a lot of his shots. Emmett was just lunging in like he always does, but it doesn't work against Topuria. Topuria showed that he won't get cracked. He showed a decent chin in this fight, did take some decent shots. And then in round five, after the big 10-8 in round four, which Chris Lee for some reason gave a 10-8, oh sorry 10-7, which was just so odd. He gave that 50-42, which was whack. But just came out in the fifth, got the takedowns for the first time in the fight, and just looked good, cruised to a decision. So really impressive from him. Um, so that's the whole card done. Really good card. For the most part, the main card delivered a lot. If that Tafa fight had gone ahead and not been a no contest, it would have been sick. Probably would have ended in a knockout anyway. The prelims were alright, but overall decent card. I'll say like a 6.5, 7 out of 10. Probably made up by the main event, Peak versus Mariscal, Emmers, and then the finishes on the card. Everything else was like a bit whatever, but that's the card. Picks I went 5, 7 and 1, so not the best. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video, which will be a prediction video for Strickland versus Abus Magomedov. See you guys.